So Albo today's on the radio and pretty obviously starts to not just walk away like, a rower at Oxford. He is just getting as far away from the 275 promise as he possibly can.
And we're not immune from that, and that led to global spikes a lot higher.
I know. Well, I guess what I'm trying to ask is,
occurred in Europe.
Factoring all that in, is anyone ever going to get the $275?
Well, what that was modelling on the transition that occurred on the basis that renewables are a cheaper form of new energy.
Now, Pembo, of course, is a man who's been around for a while, edited some newspapers for a long period of time, and you can see on the look of his face, he's going, this bloke's bullshitting. This bloke is all over the shop. Sorry for the swear, boss. All right. Michael, if a promise as central as I will cut your power bills by $275 gets a crab walk like that, it should be news. But because the PM is doing the FM circuit and it's all tay-tay every day, there's nothing on this.
Great credit to David Perberthy for having the guts to, have those follow-up questions and completely garrot Albo. So, mate, I'm just going to follow up your editorial. Bear with me for a second. I'm going to follow up your editorial where you said this bloke made this promise, but the Ukraine war had started beforehand. So the Ukraine war started on the 24th of February, right? Mm-hmm. And as you said, the election was in May. 3 months later, 21st of May, 3 months later. So what Albo's trying to say is, we had this war and the price of oil went through the roof, and therefore, the problem with power bills, et cetera, well, this was the Ukraine war.
It's garbage.
There is a great fallacy in this. It is complete garbage. Brent crude oil, Brent's the North Sea oil, right? Up north of England, it's the oil field, that's why they call it Brent crude. When the Ukraine war started, mate, it was $93 US a barrel, okay, 93. It hit $123 on the 7th of March, okay? So 2 weeks after the war started, Brent crude went through the roof. Albo knew on the 7th of March that Brent crude price had gone through the roof. So by the time of the election, Brent crude had gone down to 113. Mm-hmm. But it had gone up already $20 from what it was before the war. So it went up 20, went up another 20, then went down 20. Bottom line, it had already gone up before the election, before Albo made his promise. He knew full well this promise was an absolute dishonest lie. It was a lie. He knows it. And if you're in any doubt, have a look at that childish waffle he goes on today on Perberthy's program. So, shame on you, Albo, for misleading the entire country into thinking that a cost of living crisis could be easily dealt with. And here's an example of it. But the problem was that terrible war.
Well, and
all
exactly,
rubbish, mate.
Yeah, that Brent oil mark that you were talking about, I just checked right now, 82. Right, so way back from the heights of
$82, $82 today, correct?
Yeah, correct. All right.
It's less.
So Linda, you couldn't have a clearer promise. There's no asterisk, there's no slide. I know the best spin at the time the PMO probably would put on it is, it's 275 off the peak, wholesale -2 on your leg. But that's not the promise that was made. It was absolute, it was clear. And sure, we're not at 2025 right now. But the PM didn't exactly look like a bloke who was even willing to repeat the number that he said however many times when Australians were hiring him for the job.
Well, look, of course, don't get me started on the sort of, remember John Howard, no, ever, GST, never, ever. I mean,
you had an election for it.
With the endless broken promises that the
Linda.
Liberals have made over decades. Michael
Linda.
Kroger, I'm sure you've been part of some of that policy formation. Promises have been made.
Linda,
and,
that's pathetic.
They've been
that's
broken.
pathetic,
What we
Linda.
have here is a government making decisions in the public interest, and that is clearly, you can find abundant evidence to show that moving to renewable energy, moving to the forms of energy that the federal government are doing are the cheapest forms of energy.
Once they're built.
Moving to other forms of energy, like nuclear energy, which is, of course, so favoured by Peter Dutton, they are the most expensive. They have a hugely long time frame, and they won't feed into the grid for many, many decades. And finally, and most relevantly, no one has an answer about where you will put the waste. So what the Albanese Labor government is doing is making a good decision in the public interest to transition to renewables. It's the best economic decision and it's the best decision for the environment. And that is what a good, responsible government should do.
Yeah, but forgive me, Michael. The lipstick on the pig, right? Because I've talked about this in great detail before, right? Which is to avoid what happened to Shorten, they invented this 275 thing, right? To avoid what happened to Shorten, they invented the 600,000 jobs, right? So all the media could run off and say, well, there's got an answer, but then they never hold him to account for the answer. Everything that was personal about the last government is cyclical when it comes to this government, but even when the cycles have moved back towards their favour, like what we've been talking about tonight, and thank you for that detail before, again, it all just moves aside. Instead, I get it. Much of the media is left, but it is unbelievable the standards they will not apply to this bloke. They let this guy slide every time because they want the pack-a-whackers to his prime ministership.
Yeah, yep. That's why those laconic questions from Perberthy were just great. The sort of casual hand grenade, asking him the question that everyone on the ABC should have been asking him every single day since the election. This bloke knew that the promise he made was a vacuous promise. You know, I've said to you before, can we see the modelling, Albo? Can we see the modelling which gave you the confidence to say on 100 occasions you'd be 275 better off? Just release the modelling. And the coalition, if they haven't asked for it, should ask for the modelling. Perhaps someone in the Canberra Press Gallery might actually ask him for the modelling and we can look at it. Because, mate, those 100 promises weren't subject, by the way, Australian voters, to the following 15 things, if we can get this right. There was no asterisk. This was a promise. And the subliminal message, or not so subliminal message, was Morrison and Frydenberg have stuffed up cost of living. It's very easy to fix. Look, you get 275 straight away, off the top of our head in a year or so's time. You get that 275. That's not a problem. That's the message he gave. Now, if a company director, by the way, made a promise about forecast company profits that were based on the kind of negligible reasoning that Albo had, with no reasonable basis for making the promise, they'd be prosecuted by the regulator and go to jail, as they should. This bloke has made this promise on the flimsiest of evidence that we haven't even seen, and of course, never mentioned it since. So what a disgrace, and I hope my friends in the coalition in Canberra replay that 100 times between now and the election, because what Albanese did was win this election partly on that disgraceful con job.